Hello my friends, since the situation on the front lines remains in the high focus of entire world, especially in Pokrovsk, let's start this video from that one. And do we have some of the good news for Ukraine? Well, for the last 24 hours, Ukraine still controls part of the Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. Plus, those two settlements are still not being encircled by Russians. However, Russia expanded its territorial gains in town of Pokrovsk, and also they tried to advance to Mirnograd from the new direction. Well, just yesterday I reported about the Russian losses in Balagan village, where Russians tried to advance towards Mirnograd but failed miserably. They stuck, maybe even in this pond. Nevertheless, their second attempt just with infantry was successful and they were spotted in the southern area. Plus, from the information I have, Russians could have crossed already to Mirnograd from Balagan, also with infantry forces. And I think it's well shown in a deep state military map source, so it was yesterday and it is today. You see some of the Russian attack vectors. First of all, Russia expanded the gray area in Pokrovsk itself, advancing to this river, which is also a natural obstacle, while Russia is using not big forces yet in Pokrovsk. Plus, deep state confirms this Russian attack towards Mirnograd, so it was yesterday and it is today, so definitely there was the movement, even though Russia lost their forces in Balahan, but here they were more successful, and now they're already in this district of Mirnograd. They're multi-story buildings. Usually those buildings, they have basements, so it's very hard will be for Ukraine to get Russian forces out there. They might create some specific bridgehead from which they might attack further. And guys, just for you to understand, Ukraine will have to leave Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. The fight from Ukrainian perspective is just to let Ukrainian forces out in more or less safe manner. Ukraine is not fighting to keep control over those settlements. It is already understandable. In this situation, it is already physically impossible to defend those for a long time. What Ukraine does is it attacks on the flanks to let the forces out. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Pokrovsk and Mirnograd destiny was understandable more than a year ago. Ukraine simply doesn't have enough resources to protect those settlements. That's it. The question now goes for further protection of Donbass as general, because Ukraine still has some of the defense lines in this sector. So Ukrainian army should focus on defending this territory, not to let Russia to break through and attack, for example, Kramatorsk, Slavyansk from the south. And the general question is whether Ukraine will be able to get the forces out more or less safely with minimum losses, or it's going to be some sort of the big encirclement of the Ukrainian group. Yes, still we are not speaking about thousands of the Ukrainian armed forces, but hundreds, of course. So hopefully the situation with the physical trap of the Ukrainian army will be avoided. And actually, because of that, Ukraine intensified the strikes in the northern area towards Suvorove and towards Pankivka. Ukraine does it to deflect the attention of the Russian armed forces, because now Russians have to fight not just to take Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, but they also need to secure their flanks in this Dobropile direction, in Fedorivka, in Mayak village. Yeah, it's kind of hard for them. They have to use lots and lots of the resources. And from what I see, there is the risk for Russians to lose this attack vector towards Krasny Liman if Ukraine is successful in Suvorove and Fedorivka. The main issue for Russians is the supply connection. Now across the river it's very hard to get something to this Russian group, and if Ukrainian army is successful with this attack, well, it means that the bottleneck in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd pocket will be wide enough to evacuate most of the forces without any sort of the losses. I believe that it's the main goal for Ukrainian army right now in entire Pokrovsk-Dobropile direction, and also Ukraine continued to push the northern part of Pokrovsk, but we saw that Russians still expanded the gray area. So this is the current situation as for today, my friends. The Wall Street Journal, by the way, comes out with an article saying that for Ukraine it will be difficult to defend the territory after Pokrovsk fails, and of course Ukraine will be forced to leave Mirnograd as well. So it will bring Russia the biggest victory for the last couple of years. Yes, after Avdiivka, I confirm that those settlements were together, it's like a city, yeah, separately towns, but together, yeah, it's kind of the big loss for Ukraine. But what Russia gains? Ruined buildings, ruined infrastructure. So yes, it was the main supply hub, but Russians will not be able to use Pokrovsk and Mirnograd fully as if it was intact or not bombed complete, because all of the railways, the train stations, it requires maintenance at least. But still, they may put their forces. There are lots of the underground facilities, so it could be as a bridgehead for the further attacks. Like that. The Russian occupation of Pokrovsk Mirnograd is not a disaster for this entire region, and Ukraine will continue to defend the most robust defense line out there in the east. So just imagine how much time it will take for Russians to occupy all of that. That's why they want Ukraine to give up those territories without any sort of the fight. Of course, Ukraine will not do it. By the way, guys, I gave the interview to Mario Nafal. Probably you know this guy. Well, he is, I would say, biased a little, yeah. I wouldn't call him a really neutral guy, but I decided to participate his podcast interview. It was 1 hour and 6 minutes, where we discussed different topics, front lines, situation in Ukraine, not only politics, NATO, and everything of that. I think that this interview went very well. I try to be as honest as I am with you on this channel. I disagree with the headline, "The fall of the Pokrovsk, Ukraine's biggest loss of the war." No, because it could be much worse if, for example, this Russian attack was successful from Zoloty, Kolodets, if Russians really penetrated the main defense line, but the Ukrainian army was on time to send reinforcements, very capable forces of Ukraine, Azov, 33rd Brigade, and this catastrophe for Donbass was avoided by Ukrainian command. It's kind of the rare case where I say, wow, it was brilliant defense operation. And I said about it on this interview. I don't know how to share the link on Twitter, but it's available for now on Twitter. Hopefully he'll publish this entire interview on his YouTube channel. I expected actually some of the punches from Mario, but everything went so soft. I don't know why. Well, Mario, he's a little biased. So yeah, here's his YouTube channel. It's not big, but his Twitter is big. There's 2.4 million subscribers, so he's kind of the influential figure, and he interviewed those guys as probably even Elon Musk, Lavrov, Lukashenko, Orban. Well, you understand the direction, and the reason I decided to participate is because of the Ola Stefanishina, our ambassador of Ukraine in the United States of America. So we also should speak with the other side of the public, with those influencers, and tell to their audience our point of view. And I'm very happy that Mario didn't cut the interview. Yes, it is like that, open, out there, where I say what I think. I thought that Mario would really cut me off than I said about Russia kidnapping Ukrainian children and that they destroy Ukrainian identity on occupied territories, converting locals into Russians. But no, he left absolutely everything, so I encourage you to watch that one where I said about the honest situation on the front lines, as I tell you, yeah, in my videos, and in general the political analysis and so on, because Mario usually speaks with some of the pro-Russian influencers, so I'm very happy to highlight my point over there. Well, as you know, I'm not too much pessimistic about the end of the war, and of course I call every time that Ukraine needs more of the military support. Without it, Russia will continue to gain territories. Unfortunately, my friends, it's like that. And yeah, the name is strange. Let it be. The interview is out there. You can check it out on this channel. It doesn't show share, you know, so you may check out this channel, Mario Nafal, our even pro-Ukrainian channels like Kate from Kharkiv. They're following this guy. He's very influential, 2.6 million followers. Of course, his platform is a good one for me to raise the awareness about situation in Ukraine, war in Ukraine, and what is really happening. Well, anyways, let's go back to the front line. Here we have the video of the Ukrainian drones kaputting Russian Shahid drones. Just yesterday I told you about the big kaboom happened in Donetsk area, not far away from the Donetsk airport. I flown there, by the way, then I was an airline pilot long time ago, before even the occupation of Crimea. Very nice place was to fly, big runway, and here Russians put their storage of the Shahid drones. Oh my god, more than 1,000 of the drones were located there. I don't honestly know what Russians were doing deploying Shahids that close. It's crazy. Our OSINTs already identified the location. Definitely it is the storage that is visible on satellite images. Very its own territory of the airfield, and it is gone, not partially, but absolutely completely. According to Ukrainian side, the losses are huge, and judging on the kabooms fired, definitely. That's why initially yesterday I thought, oh, maybe it's some sort of the big ammunition storage of Russian army, but no, it's the Shahid storage, which also could influence the situation on the front line, because Russians start to use Shahids at the front line, not just hitting Ukrainian infrastructure far behind the front lines, but also they operate against Ukrainian even armored vehicles. The Russians have new advanced Shahid drone modifications. Basically, they convert Shahids into the big FPV drones with real-time control, and it could be more devastating for Ukraine. And with that, Russians already hit a couple of the Ukrainian trains behind the front lines and close to the front lines. But as we may see with those images, Ukraine has some sort of the antidote, also long-range drones capable to strike precisely with a real-time control. Awesome. Plus, Ukrainian Guru military intelligence the day before yesterday hit the Russian headquarters. We have even some sort of the image with clarification. Headquarters of the Russian Rubicon drone unit. This is the most successful advanced Russian drone unit out there in the Russian army, and they're very capable. But somehow Ukraine knew about their position, and the drones were sent to their headquarters, kabooming them completely. Also, Ukraine added with some of the aviation strikes. Gliding aviation bombs are used elsewhere on the front lines from both of the armies. Oh, by the way, the Ukrainian ambassador Stefanishina, I already mentioned her in this video, saying about her interview to Mario. Well, in her latest interview to Bloomberg this time, she mentioned that Ukraine is negotiating with the United States to provide Tomahawk missiles, and she mentioned that negotiations are positive. Yeah, we understand that still we're far away from the final point, but I guess it is possible for Ukraine to obtain some number of the Tomahawks. The main issue here that Ukraine needs hundreds of those missiles, but we understand that there is not enough ground launchers, and it's going to be a very long story to build those. They have just been presented, this Heimer style of the launcher, big truck, similar to Patriot launcher as well. Well, unfortunately, it might take a couple of years at least to build enough of the ground launchers, but still some small number of those missiles could be supplied to Ukraine just as a political movement from Donald Trump to show Russia that he's damn serious to provide pressure. I think United States and our allies, they have another weapons which could be more successful for Ukrainian army use, especially some of the cruise missiles which could be launched from the airplanes. I think there is the way out for Ukraine to really push Russia effectively, but the talks are now about Tomahawks. Well, we'll see. It will not change the situation on the ground, we understand, but it will add something, you know, one more red line crossed, one more way to hit Russian refineries or military infrastructure of Russia. So it's a good thing in general. Yeah, little by little, but Russia is getting pressed, even by Donald Trump, because for now sanctions are effective. We see that Turkey, China, they refuse to purchase some of the Russian oil. They're changing their contracts. India as well. They're not getting rid of the Russian oil completely, but it's some sort of the not okay situation for them. Not okay, not as great as it was before, but sanctions, they need to be reviewed, intensified each time, some period of time. For the next few months, of course, they will work and they will push Russian economy. But next, be sure that they will find out how to purchase the Russian very cheap oil. This is very addictive. It was even addictive for Europe for a very, very long time period. Then, for example, Merkel put Russia on this oil needle and later on even started to blame some of the normal allies of Ukraine, like, for example, Baltic countries, that they are guilty for the war to start. Like, what? She mentioned that in her interview roughly a couple of months ago. I was shocked, you know. Well, anyways, good news. The talks are ongoing about Tomahawks, but if we speak about reality, still infrastructure is absent to accommodate the large number of Tomahawks. It is more political move than military one, but still it is okay. It is a good move. And Sweden also wants to help Ukraine to fundraise money for Gripen. Also, they plan to take the confiscated Russian assets. Well, political decision has not yet been taken to confiscate Russian assets or not, but maybe Sweden could invest it first and then receive those money. Well, at least they plan to do it. Well, as for Gripen, it is also a long-term program, will take years and years, but it's a good move absolutely, as well as with Tomahawks. Well, we'll see about Tomahawks because negotiations are ongoing. Here, it is already a deal, so it's more real. And to Kaboom news, one of the biggest Russian power plants in Kostroma went offline after some sort of the strange drone visited the facility. Ukraine continued to apply sanctions on Russian, not just the refineries, but the energy sector in general. Well, it's just a response of Ukraine on Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. And well, unfortunately, now we see more and more blackouts happening in Ukraine, and it could be this winter could be very bad for Ukrainians in general. Could be the worst winter since the start of the war because Russia intensified its strikes. So Ukraine has absolute right to respond in the same way. Yeah, obviously Ukraine doesn't have the strategic aviation, all of those cruise missiles, and just limited capabilities to produce drones compared to what it is needed. But Ukraine responds, and it is good. For Russia, big Russia, it will not cause those kind of the issues as Russia may cause for Ukraine. But Ukraine has no other choice than to resist and to strike back. And those strikes, they continue to harm Russia a lot in many of the ways. So they continue to film. Yeah, this is the plant itself, and it continued to burn. Also, the small oil storage was hit in Simferopol. Yeah, it's not that big, but Ukraine already demolished multiple of the oil storages in Crimea. In that peninsula, occupied territory, there is the huge fuel and oil crisis. Oh, a Czech parliamentary speaker. He is such a brave man. He removed the Ukrainian flag from the parliament building. Wow, what an achievement. He really should be proud of himself. Guys, this is hilarious. Those populists are everywhere, and sadly that we see them also in Europe. I mean, this urbanization of Europe, it is happening also in Romania. Yeah, nearly that strange candidate was elected. In Czech Republic, there are now some of the strange people in power, including this, well, his name is Tomio Okamura. He is partially Japanese, but somehow he is Czech or what, I don't know. But of course, it is the most populist move out there. Why he didn't do it himself, like climb and tear this flag down, show how you don't really like Ukraine and like Russia, or what, whom you like in this case, yeah? Well, luckily there are some of the sane members of parliament in Czech Republic, and they put Ukrainian flags even from their offices, and now there are 3, so -1 plus 3, yeah? Ukrainian flags. Well, those politicians, they're just hilarious, you know, fighting against Ukrainian flags. Try to fight against the Ukrainian army, your ass will be kicked. Or at least participate some of the interview battle with some of the Ukrainian speaker. That's hilarious, actually, what I saw. It just highlights how stupid they are. That's it. Oh, NATO is doing something against those drones. No way. I thought we should wait maybe for 5 years or 10 for them to attempt to shut down those drones. A new system to identify and take down Russian drones is being deployed to NATO's eastern flank. We're speaking about Poland and some other country. Yeah, Romania and Poland. Just this week, several of the airports were closed because of the drone activity. They're also flying over the military bases, and for those few months, and then those drones are flying, just one was shut down. The debris were not found over Estonian air base. It happened. Wow. That's why, guys, I'm kind of skeptical about NATO as organization, because they show really their weakness. And those drones are not being shut down, as well as the Russian airplanes, which violated NATO airspace for the few months, several of the times. It's crazy. Like, what are you doing, NATO? You should respond. Otherwise, Putin will escalate more. And yeah, they deploy some of the anti-drone systems, but at the same time, for example, United States are taking their forces out from Romania. Those forces were deployed since the start of the war, Russia against Ukraine. I guess there were around 700 American troops deployed, but still, United States, they have thousands of the troops in Europe. Just that withdrawal from Romania, it was also kind of strange. And I don't believe, honestly, I also could be wrong, guys. I just share my opinion here on this channel. But I think that the United States of America will not land its forces to Baltic states if Russia starts its aggression there. Maybe some European countries might help Baltics, but United States, I don't think so. They try to not to be involved. Well, we'll see. I hope Russia will not start this new special military operation. Well, I agree with, I guess, Rasmussen, the ex-NATO chief. He says that Ukraine faces forever war unless Europe steps up pressure on Russia. Yeah. 100%. It is already the war of attrition. We don't see any sort of the signs for Putin to stop. So the only way how Ukraine may stop Russian aggression is to physically do it on the front lines. Without enough military support, it is not possible to achieve, and Russia will continue to scroll, each year taking small portions of the ground. This war continues already for almost 4 years and will continue for years ahead unless there is a real pressure on Russia. Russian economy, yes, it is struggling in one or other way. Putin is saying about some sort of the soft landing of the Russian economy, but now it is capable. Russia is capable to produce military. Russians live their normal lives, I would say, mainly. In general, they are years far from the devastating crisis. So let's speak about it honestly. Russia is still big, mighty power, human resources, manpower, everything is out there, as well as the support from allies. North Korea supplied millions of artillery shells. China helps with technologies and economy, as well as other countries. So because of that, it could be really a forever war with light Russian territorial gains, unfortunately. Yeah, Russian speakers say that Ukraine already lost everything, but no, Russia is losing it, little by little. If that war continues for extensive period of time, it will finally ruin Russia. And it is just said that Ukraine continued to struggle. Ukraine has losses because of not enough military support. In every of my videos almost I call for military support, but I'm just a YouTuber, so who listens to me, yeah? I mean, from those high politicians, but they hear you guys. You are people who elect those politicians, so you have your own opinion. And I guess it is more or less the same as mine if we speak about the military support. It looks like for Lavrov it is better to avoid staying close to the windows. Well, the Moscow Times writes that Lavrov has reportedly fallen out of favor of Putin after he failed the arrange of the Putin's-Trump summit in Budapest. Yeah, just as a reminder, there was a phone call between Rubio and Lavrov after meeting in Oval Office between Ukrainian and American delegation, which went not good, and Trump again changed his rhetorics. And we know that Zelensky was even pushed by Donald Trump's administration to give up Donbass, so it wasn't that good for Ukraine. But after the call between Rubio and Lavrov, it started to be not such good for Russia, because first of all, this propaganda for Putin, first of all, was cancelled, and the next day the sanctions were applied on Lukoil and Rosneft. All of that happened after this calls. And in my video back then, I told that Lavrov did a very great job that was unachievable for lots of the European colleagues who told Donald Trump many of the times to apply sanctions on Russia. Please apply sanctions. Do not meet with Putin. Sanctions, pressure. Well, thanks to Lavrov, those sanctions are out there. Sometimes I monitor the Russian TV for propaganda, and I haven't seen Lavrov for multiple of the days already. He's been cut from air completely. Cut from air. Maybe even physically cut. Well, Lavrov actually, he is not that close part of the Putin's FSB or ex-KGB circle. He's like this some sort of official who was out there with Yeltsin, and now he is serving for Putin, but still he's like not that high Putin's official friend. So Putin may window him at any moment. And he's kind of old and cringy. I think that he'll be replaced maybe even the next year. Great news from Latvia. Latvia, thank you so much for giving Ukraine those armored vehicles. Those are 6x6 infantry fighting vehicles, from what I may say. Ukraine just recently obtained 21 of those vehicles. Those were presented, but of course they require some of the modifications. Obviously, if they look like that, they can be used just for parades. A single drone strike and unit is gone. There should be some sort of the hedgehog modification of those BTRs, I guess. Well, Latvia, great news. Thank you for your kind support of Ukraine. Guys, as usual, I'm waiting for more updates coming from the front lines. As soon as I get those, I will keep you informed. Thank you so much for supporting this channel on Patreon and membership. The link for my Patreon is in the video description just below, and for membership you may just press join. Because of your support only, I'm capable to film those videos, so thank you for making this content possible. My friends, if you don't have the opportunity to support me financially, just press your like to this video and subscribe for the channel, because that is how you help YouTube algorithms to propel it all around. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.